Welcome in to the Thursday edition of the 14. I'm your host, Chris Lee. Barry Allen joins me as he normally does during baseball season. Barry, we're just a few days away from the start of the College World Series. We were talking off podcast. I think we both agree this bracket is almost impossible to pick. All the games are tough to pick. I could literally make a case for any team in this field why it could win it. I could make a case for any team in this field why it could go 0-2. This is just one of the brutally toughest brackets to pick that I've ever encountered, and I think that's going to make for a great Omaha.
Yeah, I think it's going to be good TV, and I think it's going to be very entertaining. And if you look at some of the numbers from the super regionals, the Arkansas North Carolina State game Sunday night drew 799,000 viewers. Highest rated super regional game this year. I think the numbers and eyes are going to be even higher, in Omaha starting Saturday with 4 tremendous games and 8 really, really good teams. I think it's really difficult to say that one team is better than the other. I think it's hard to say this team's going to win. I think it's hard to say this team's going to go 0-2. I mean, it's really competitive. I think it's balanced. I think we said the other day that there's 102 combined appearances, World Series appearances among these teams. We've got 15 national championships among these teams, and we've got some really compelling matchups. We'll get into those, but Stanford and NC State, 2 teams that no one thought would be there, are there. And they've slugged their way to Omaha, and then the Vanderbilt pitching against the Arizona hitting, and then the magic of Virginia, 6 straight elimination game wins, and Brian O'Connor coming back to Omaha again. He's from nearby Council Bluffs, Iowa, and he's coming back to Omaha where he played at Creighton to try to win another national title against a Tennessee team that no one thought would be anywhere near this in year 4 with Tony Vitello. And then close out the first round with, the match, to me, the matchup of all matchups, Texas and Mississippi State, a team that dominated World Series history with 37 appearances and 6 national championships. Texas taking on Mississippi State, who's been one of the blue bloods of college baseball, but never figured out how to get a win in Omaha to win the national championship. And so be some really interesting storylines and matchups as we get into the weekend and next week.
Let's do this today. I want us to break down the 3 games involving the SEC teams. In other words, their first game, and we'll have plenty more analysis and picks and things at the site. In fact, we are going to talk through a lot of that as soon as we're done with the podcast. But let's today talk about the matchups. Let's start with bracket 1. You've got Vanderbilt and Arizona, and I know that we've both seen Vanderbilt a lot. We both got a chance to watch Arizona in its super regional win over Ole Miss over the weekend. I did not see Arizona play other than that all year, but I think Arizona's got an argument as the top hitting team in the country. Now, I know that park plays to hitting, and there's a little bit of altitude, and it's not necessarily a home run park because the fences are a little further back, although the altitude certainly minimizes that a bit, but certainly there's a lot of ground to cover in the outfield, and it plays to extra bases. Arizona's lineup, my goodness, these cats can hit top to bottom. I do this thing called runs created per 27 outs. It's built off of Bill James' formula. Arizona's got 4 guys in the lineup that create 10 runs or more per 27 outs. That's amazing. And one guy at 9.9. Not really a weak bat in the lineup. I guess you could say shortstop would be that, but Nick McLaury is just merely a good hitter and not a great one. Vanderbilt didn't always hit the ball really well, but I think a lot of this comes down to pitching. Arizona's pitching, frankly, not that impressive. The Wildcats are not dominant on the mound. They don't have a big arm, probably more than any team in this field, and I think that hurts you in Omaha. But the one thing the Wildcats can do, in addition to hit the ball, even when they're not hitting the ball and getting on base, they make it just so difficult for you. You saw the battle Doug Nikhazy had to put away hitters. And my concern, if I'm Vanderbilt, Barry, is that Arizona can just battle and battle and battle, and Kumar Rocker has been prone to high pitch counts at times. And I could see one of these things where Rocker throws, 109 pitches and gets removed, with one out in the sixth or no outs in the sixth or something, just because, and he might be effective, but they run up pitch counts so much that I am concerned for Vanderbilt about how deep Kumar Rocker can go into that game.
Well, I think you could even take that to Leiter as well. I mean, they both high pitch count guys, and I think Tennessee did that to some extent against both of them in the series in Knoxville. I think Tennessee's a little similar to Arizona hitting wise, just from the patience at the plate with the walks and fouling off pitches. I think one point in the game Saturday night, Roxy Bernstein, who was doing the game for ESPN, said that Arizona had fouled off 13 pitches in this inning against Doug Nikhazy, and you could tell he was mad. I mean, he was. I mean, I think he's a good sport about it, and he's a competitor, but he was like, put one in play. You could see him, his mouth, put one in play for once. I think they were really frustrating him, and then he was able to get a strikeout and get out of the inning. But I think through 2 innings that night, and even though Ole Miss had a huge lead, he's at 45, 50 pitches through 2 innings, and you end up, I think, coming out in the 6th or 7th. But I think that would be a concern for Vanderbilt, that Rocker's, in control maybe, or Leiter's in control maybe, and things are going well. But, you get into the 5th and 6th innings, and all of a sudden we've already eclipsed 100 pitches, and we're nearing 110, 115 with an out or 2 in the 6th inning. And I think that's something that Vanderbilt has to be concerned about. And I think they have to be very efficient on the mound. And I think Arizona has to be very selective at the plate, too. But I'm not sure, other than Stanford, and obviously this is not even comparison, but that may be the only staff that Arizona's seen that will resemble what they will see in Omaha with Vanderbilt on Saturday night. I mean, these are 2 elite guys, and Nikhazy shut them down at home. So even though his pitch count was high, he shut them down at home. I think Rocker and Leiter and crew will feel pretty good. It's Vanderbilt's bullpen that's got to be able to, finish the game. If they get them out in the 6th inning or 7th inning, it's that bullpen that's got to finish the game. I would think in this series, even as powerful as Arizona is on offense, and they don't hit a ton of home runs, which is good for this ballpark because there's not a lot of home runs that are hit here. But I would think Vanderbilt pitching might have just a little bit of an edge here, just because the depth that they have, but the 2 big guys they have to start the games in Rocker and Leiter.
Well, I think Vanderbilt's got a huge edge in pitching. I don't think probably anybody questions that much, but you just look at the lineup, and we've got on our site, we're trying to break down what each team's lineup hits against the handedness they're going to face. In other words, Kumar Rocker for Vanderbilt, a right-hander. So I've got the batting averages, slugging percentages, and on-base percentages of each Arizona hitter against righties this year on the site. And you can see that for yourself, but Arizona really hits righties really well up and down the lineup. I mean, frankly, it hit everybody well. And again, some of this is ballpark, right? Arizona's ballpark plays very much favorably to hitting. But the thing about Arizona, one thing that I look at, you can look at ERAs and they don't always tell you everything. I look at runners per innings pitched, and Arizona's starter, Chase Silseth, who I believe played at Tennessee for a spell, 1.6 runners per inning pitched. That's horrible. That's not what you want your number 1 starter. I know he went 8-1. I think that says a lot about the offense behind him. But, you look at Vanderbilt, for example. I'm trying to find Kumar Rocker. I believe he was around 0.95 for that. So I don't just look at ERAs. I look at how many runners per inning do you give up? Because sometimes ERA can be a little flukish over a while. Yeah, I mean, you got Rocker 0.95, Leiter 0.96. You go to the bullpen, and Vanderbilt has got Nick Maldonado, who was 0.81. Luke Murphy, 1.118. You look at Arizona, it just doesn't have those type of numbers. And again, ballpark difference. Hawkins Field is kind of a a little bit more of a pitcher's park. Arizona's not. But my concern for Arizona is in terms of getting through the tournament, their pitchers give up a lot of base runners. And I just think that's problematic in a park where you have to scratch out runs. More runners creates more opportunity. And I think that's what what Arizona obviously would be worried about.
Yeah, and Arizona could score, obviously, but you look at some of their games too. You thought, well, this is a powerful offense, but you look at some of the games. You look in the season. They gave up 11 runs to Southeastern Louisiana, 13 to Oklahoma, 8 to Dallas Baptist, 10 to Wichita State. I mean, 18 in a loss to Oregon. You look at some of these games where they have a ton of 10-run games they've scored, but they've also given up, 10 runs a ton of times themselves, 16 runs in a game to Washington. Now they're winning some of these games, but they're winning these slugfests, and you wonder how this slugfest is going to work, when you get to Omaha and you get to some of these elite guys. And I hate to keep throwing back to Nikhazy, but he shut them down. And that's similar to what they're going to run into with Rocker and Leiter, and their staff. Even Ole Miss, they got out on Ole Miss pretty early Saturday night or Sunday night in the finals in Game 3 to knock them out. But it took 5 innings against Derek Diamond the other night to get the lead, and then they got blown out in Game 2. When Irvin did not pitch well at all, 7 earned runs and just an inning plus. So, and their bullpen, the 2 wins were decent, but in the game that they didn't win, they had some issues there. So the pitching, for me, for Arizona, you look at their schedule all year long. They're 45-16. They lead the nation in runs scored, but even in some of these games they've won, giving up a lot of runs, and just seems like they've been able to outslug people at home. And can they do that in Omaha? We'll find that out. They didn't do that against Doug Nikhazy. They did not do that in some of the games they played. They lost. I look at Stanford, the only team they played that's gone to Omaha. They lost 5-4 in 13 innings. They won 20-2, and then they lost 8-2. So, crazy series with Stanford, but that's the only series you have to look at on their schedule of teams that they actually played that are in Omaha. And you just think that once you get to Omaha, it's pitching and defense, and Arizona seems to struggle with that on the mound, and even in these games that they win, they seem to give up, quite a few runs, and you would think that Vanderbilt would be able to handle that with the pitching staff that they have.
Well, Arizona has something really unusual. I don't know if you would have seen this much anywhere in the country, and I would almost bet money you don't see this anywhere else in this tournament. I have not counted it up, so I'm not stating it as fact, but I'm looking at depth of pitching staff. Arizona, I believe, by my count, had 12 guys who threw 20 innings or more this year. That's really unusual. We talk about Mississippi State having a really deep pitching staff and throwing a lot of guys. I don't know the State had more than 9 or 10 guys who did that. Now, look, Arizona may be without 2 of those guys. I still don't think – we don't know yet on the 2 relievers who were suspended over last weekend, do we, Barry?
No, nothing has come around. Haven't learned anything on Luna or Abshire. They were suspended by the school, not by the baseball program or the athletic department, before the super regional following an off-campus incident. Violated the school's code of conduct, and as of yesterday, and I haven't seen anything this morning either that would let me think that those guys are going to be available or not available for Omaha. We're going to have to assume right now that they're not. I don't know that it affected them a ton in the series with Ole Miss, but I certainly think it would affect them greatly in the trip to Omaha without having 2 key left-handers in their lineup who had one actually got a win in the regional, and I think it would affect them quite a bit if they do not have those two guys in Omaha.
Well, their pitching coach is Nate Yeske, who was at Oregon State during a lot of its run of dominance. And he's a very good pitching coach. He has improved that staff from what I understand. Obviously, the talent, not what that school needs on the mound at this point. But I think it's pretty clear what they're going to do. Probably sometimes in these games that are blowouts where they're either taking it on the chin or they're up 10 runs, which they're prone to being at times. They probably let some of these guys stay in and just take a beating when it's not going well for the sake of the pitching staff, is my guess. But I think what you'll see out in Omaha, my guess is as many arms as he uses, you will see quick hooks, you will see matchups, you'll see guys in to pitch to one or two batters. And the thing about them, their pitching is not that good, but they have so many arms that sometimes you just catch the right guy and you get lightning in a bottle for 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 innings. And I expect that's what they're going to do. They're going to ride guys out. If they get a hot hand, they'll go with it. And sometimes you can get away with that. And certainly they have lots of options. There's a chance they find the right guy on the right day.
Well, they have 3 guys that have collected 15 saves this year. So that shows you they closed by committee. Vanell has 8, Flanagan 4, and Price has 3. Looking at their numbers, Vanell 5 wins and 8 saves, a 2.59 ERA, but back to your 1.4 base runners per inning kind of guy. Flanagan 4 saves, but he has 4 losses against no wins. And then Price with a win and a loss and 3 saves and a 1.57 ERA, but all of them allow over 1.2 base runners per inning. Another interesting thing for Arizona to me with the pitching staff was Chandler Murphy, a right-hander, who's been their number 3 starter all year long. He did not get the ball in Game 3 against Ole Miss in the Super Regional. They went with Dawson Netz, who had 24 relief appearances and no starts, and he got them 2 innings, and that was it. And Murphy was not used in the Super Regional at all as a reliever or as a starter. So that was an interesting for me to see that, a guy that'd been their number 3 guy all year, 7-0 with a 3.63 ERA, and he doesn't even crack the rotation, even in a bullpen situation in a Super Regional against Ole Miss. So we'll keep an eye on that. I don't know if he's injured. I don't know what the situation was there, but they opted to go with Netz in Game 3. Worked out for them because they scored a ton of runs. Maybe Murphy was going to be the next option had the game not gotten out of hand. I don't know, but he was not used in that series, and I thought that was very interesting.
Well, on the other hand, there's Vanderbilt, right? And the Commodores are not going to run out of pitching out in Omaha. The question to me is how far can Kumar Rocker go? I don't know. I think if they get 7 innings out of him, they've got to be thrilled. And again, nothing against him. It's that lineup. And when you're a high strikeout guy, you're going to throw a lot of pitches. So that to me is the key, is how long can Rocker go? And I bet you Nick Maldonado is the guy who comes out of the pen first. Maybe Chris McIlvain, but Maldonado's a guy who doesn't walk a lot of people. And his bugaboo this year was the home run. But we know balls don't get out of that yard there very often. So I'm thinking those are going to be the 2 key guys for Vanderbilt in Game 1.
Yeah, I think he's a key weapon. Maldonado, talked about, the size of High Corbett Field. It's a big park like TD Ameritrade, but Arizona's not a home run hitting team. And TD Ameritrade is not a home run hitter's park. That's what worries me about some of these teams that rely on the home runs. When they get to Omaha and teams that don't bunt and play the short game, that ballpark can swallow you up. And I think that fits Maldonado's style really well, to come in and be able to pitch and not worry about maybe a ball jumping out of there. Now, if the wind's blowing out, it's a different thing. But you're just looking at, his numbers for the season and looking at Arizona's numbers, and you would think that Maldonado versus Arizona would be a really good matchup for Vanderbilt. Have Rocker and then Maldonado come in and be able to maybe close it out. That would be a good matchup for Vanderbilt going into Game 1 against Arizona.
Let's move on and talk Tennessee against Virginia. I think Tennessee's the better club most days, but the problem for Tennessee is who gets the ball. And that's Andrew Abbott, who had a 3.04 on run average, struck out 152 guys, walked just 30 in 102 thirds innings pitched. Again, the big deal for Abbott was home runs. He gave up 13. You kind of take that more out of the equation in that ballpark. And I know that Tennessee is a great hitting team, one of the best 5 hitting teams in the country, in my opinion. But elite pitchers, a lot of times, stop elite offenses. And for me, for Tennessee, that's really not the draw you wanted to start what you hope is a run in Omaha.
Yeah, and I think Virginia is a really interesting team. Working on their preview right now. We'll have that up on our site a little bit later today. But working on just looking at their team in this postseason tournament, it really hasn't been about their starters. It's been about their bullpen. As a matter of fact, all of their wins have come from their bullpen and lengthy outings by this bullpen. 7 innings against JU, 4 innings against South Carolina, 5 2/3 against Old Dominion, 6 against Old Dominion, and 5 2/3 against Dallas Baptist Monday. They've only had one starter go a lot more than 6 innings in a game, and that was McGarry against against Dallas Baptist on Sunday. Went 7 innings, got a no decision because they couldn't score. He went 7 innings, 2 hits, and struck out 10. Their bullpen, they really leaned on this bullpen. Matt Wyatt went 5 2/3 on Monday through 80 pitches and got the win. Shock, who's been really good for them, gave them 5 2/3 innings and 10 strikeouts in the regional, wins over South Carolina and Old Dominion. They extended him probably a little too much on Tuesday against Old Dominion. He threw 75 pitches, so he did not pitch in the Super Regional at all. But it's the bullpen is what really catches my attention for Virginia, and a team that's hot. This is a team that was 4-13 to start ACC play, and got hot, won 14 of their last 20 ACC games. Kind of a similar path to the 2015 team, and I just think they've got some mojo working for them with 6 straight elimination game wins. They join Rice and Florida State's the only 2 teams in the 64-team bracket to lose the opening game of a regional and lose the opening game of a super regional and make it to Omaha. And, Rice had a really good team with Rice with, Damian, I think it's Thames is how he pronounced it. They had a really nice club in 89 or 99. And in Florida State, they always have good teams, but, those teams bouncing back and winning those games. And so they've joined some elite company. But to me, it's this bullpen that I like for Virginia that's got some depth and then they've got some magic on offense too, to just, find a way to get the hits. Teal hit the grand slam. I just kind of like the way this team is. They got a 3.61 staff ERA, second in the ACC, 14th in the country, and they field 975, which is not awful. It's 5th in the ACC, but just this bullpen and how they've been able to piece this together during the postseason has been pretty remarkable for Virginia.
Yeah, Abbott's last start, he went 5. The one before that, 5 2/3. The one before that, 6 1/3. The one before that, 6 2/3. The one before that, 7. The one before that, 7. The one before that, 7. I think you get the point. This is a kid who has not thrown a complete game all year, but he's been durable. He's also a lefty, so we'll need to check the splits for the Vols against lefties. I don't know the answer to that. We will have that in our previews. But that's the other thing is, he didn't go as far into his last start against Dallas Baptist as he has in a while. And I think that's the thing. I know their bullpen got the job done, but I look at that on paper and I look at the runners per inning numbers. Virginia's bullpen gave up a lot of runners this year across the board. Now, it also got better, but I think that's the one thing if you're Tennessee is I think it's one game when you've got Abbott in there and another when he's out.
Yeah, I mean, you look at his numbers. I mean, he's second in the league in ERA. He's first in the league in strikeouts. He's first in the league in strikeouts per nine, or second in the league in strikeouts per 9 innings. I mean, certainly a different team with him on the mound than when the others are on the mound. It'd be interesting to look and see the games they won when he started as opposed to what their record is when he didn't start. And maybe that's something we look up and get in our preview a little bit later that we get up on Virginia. But just it does look like they may have a little bit more confidence with him out there, and they may be a little bit better. But with him out on the mound, and just kind of see how Tennessee can handle that, because they're Virginia's got the magic working with 6 straight elimination game wins, but they're going to be playing a very powerful Tennessee team, a team that, I know they rely on the home run a lot, and did that in the postseason. They've hit 16 home runs in the postseason, but I'm interested to see how that will shake out in Omaha when they get there. Maybe not so much a home run hitter's ballpark, but I'll be interested to see how that works when they get there. Abbott's given up 13 home runs this year. Vassell, the other starter's given up 13. They've given up 57 as a staff. And I think, that might play well for Tennessee if they're, maybe not playing at TD Ameritrade, which is not really a home run hitter's park. But I like this Tennessee team the way they're playing too. They seem to have the magic. They seem to have the confidence. And it's a good story as well. A team that, I don't think anybody thought before the season started they were going to win the East. Let alone host and win a regional and host and win a super regional, be playing in Omaha. But, here they are. And I think it's another one of those matchups we look at, and you look at these teams and you say, well, this team can win and this team can win. This is another hard game to pick too, between, 2 teams that are playing extremely well. And that's what you would expect this time of the year.
Okay, let's talk Tennessee. I'm a Chad Dallas fan. The results this year weren't great for a number one starter. But let's isolate some numbers a minute. He gave up a 7% free pass rate. It's outstanding for a starter. 30% strikeout rate, really good for a starter. He gave up a 5% home run rate, which is awful. But let's look at the ballpark they play in. We all know about that. That's the one thing Chad Dallas had trouble with. That gets very much neutralized out in that park. 1.19 runners per inning. Again, I look at the way that you win in Omaha is being able to string together runners and get a timely hit. I think Chad Dallas for Tennessee is going to be a much better pitcher in that setting than he is in his own ballpark.
I agree. And I think, him being a veteran and, being through some of these wars with them over the years, I think that gives them a little bit of an advantage with him just because of the way he pitches, because of this, his mentality as a pitcher. I think his numbers are decent for the year. I mean, he's a strikeout guy, 118 strikeouts. He's got 11 wins, but you mentioned the 20 home runs. I mean, they're 3 starters, and I think this is neutralized in Omaha. If we're playing somewhere else, this might be a huge story, but I think this is neutralized a lot in Omaha. I mean, they're 3 starting guys, Dallas, Tidwell, and Heflin. They've given up 43 home runs this year out of the 72. So the rest of the staff has only given up 31, but a lot of that has to do with the ballpark they play in. And you saw the Vandy series there. You saw the Arkansas series there. Some of that. You watched the regionals and super regionals. I mean, the ball flew out of there. And, Chris Burke even said that as the weather gets warmer in Knoxville this time of the year, the ball really jumps. And there were a ton of home runs in the regional. There were a ton of home runs in the super regional. I mean, there was 10 on Sunday. Tennessee hit 6 and LSU hit 4. It seemed like every run in the game was a home run. But that will be neutralized in Omaha at TD Ameritrade with the ballpark as it is. And I think you will see a confident Chad Dallas on the mound anyway, but I think you will see a more confident Chad Dallas in the fact that he knows that the ball leaving the yard is not as great a chance there as it is in some of the places that he's pitched this year.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that changes the way you can pitch. The other thing is Tennessee's got one of those, we can use him for several innings closers that were so outstanding in the league this year, and Sean Hunley. Here's some numbers on him: 6% free pass rate, outstanding. 27% strikeout, okay, but that plays in that park. 2.8% home run rate. Again, I think that gets neutralized. 1.01 runners per inning. That to me is the key number. I just think that it tilts the advantage more towards Tennessee the longer you get in that game. I like Tennessee's lineup better than I do Virginia's. Virginia only scored 5.8 runs per 27 outs, which is not great. Tennessee was higher than that. I think that the problem for Tennessee will be Andrew Abbott, but I think if they can get past him and have a lead or maybe the game tied, to me, I think at that point the advantage tilts pretty decidedly towards the Vols.
Yeah, I like their offense. Liam Spence, at the top, and this is another one of those teams that we talked about. Arizona frustrating the pitcher. This is a team that can frustrate a pitcher. And as good as Abbott is, this team can frustrate him. I mean, they're going to take pitches. They're going to foul pitches off. They're going to work count. I mean, he's going to work. I mean, he may get you out, but he's going to work to do it. And it may be 5, 6, 8, 9, 10 pitches and retire you. And, you do that, even if you've got a, 3 up, 3 down inning and you use 30 pitches. I mean, you're not in there for long because you're, in 4 innings, you're already at 120 pitches. And that was the case this year in a game against Alabama that I saw that, they didn't have any runs. They trailed 1-0 after 4 innings, but they got Dylan Smith out of the game, who left in the 4th inning with 99 pitches. And so they did their job, and then they were able to come back and get the lead, and then Alabama tied it, and they won the game in extra innings. But, they got the starter out of the game in the 4th inning, and that's what this offense can do. They take a ton of walks. They don't mind being hit by a pitch. And they got 300 and something walks. They've been hit by a pitch 29 times. And they bunt. They have 22 sacrifice bunts, 8 of those from Max Ferguson. That offense is going to play in Omaha. You're going to have to manufacture runs. They're a doubles team. They lead the SEC in doubles this year with 133. And that's the kind of offense you need in this ballpark to go and be successful. You need to manufacture runs. You need to string some hits together. Doubles play good there. And if you bunt the guy over and you get him in, every run counts in Omaha. And that's why this offense could be very dangerous out there.
Let's talk Mississippi State, Texas. I presume the Longhorns will throw Ty Madden, who is a potential top 10 overall pick. I don't know if he's been their best starter lately, but I think them being probably creatures of habit, that's where they'll go. Texas has really got great pitching depth up and down this whole team. Again, a thing I look at is runners allowed, and Texas does not allow a ton, 1.21 as a team. And some of the numbers that actually made that rise are arms you're probably not going to see in this venue. Mississippi State's hitting has been up and down, trended upwards as the season ended. Again, as I thought State developed more lineup depth. But how do you size this one up? Of course, Will Bednar will be going for Mississippi State, I would presume. I think this is another great starting pitching matchup. Both teams have got some bullpen arms. Should be a fun game to watch here, too.
It should be, and we should point out that these two teams opening with each other in Omaha, they also opened with each other during the regular season. This was Mississippi State and Texas' first game at Globe Life Park back on February the 20th, and Mississippi State treated Ty Madden rather rudely that afternoon or that morning. He only went 4 innings, gave up 4 hits, 4 runs, 3 walks, and 5 strikeouts. As Mississippi State jumped out to a 5-0 lead and then beat Texas 8-3. They started McLeod in that game. He went 4 innings, struck out 7, and then left the game in the 5th inning with the bases loaded. That's where they turned it over to Landon Sims, and that's where the legend of Landon Sims was born this year. And he came in and struck out the side with the bases loaded in the 5th, and then retired all 12 hitters he faced with 10 strikeouts and got the win. So Texas has seen Landon Sims, even though it's been a long time ago. Mississippi State's seen Ty Madden, even though that's been a long time ago. But I think I think it helps both teams to be able to see those guys and have some have some familiarity with them. But I thought both of these teams here in Omaha very worthy. But I thought both teams had easy regionals. I don't think Texas regional was really hard. Then they got lucky and got a 4 seed to come to the super regional. Mississippi State super regional was a little bit tougher, but I could see both of these staffs with a lot of pitching. We could see a really nice pitching matchup, Saturday night between two of these College World Series icons in Texas and Mississippi State. And I think we're in for a real treat Sunday night when these two teams, pardon the pun, lock horns in Omaha.
Well, one thing that'll be interesting to watch too, Texas team that traditionally has played a lot of small ball, 45 sack bunts this year. Texas also steals a good bit. Mike Antico, 39 for 43 this year. Eric Kennedy, 17 to 21. Really, this lineup, the top part hits pretty well. The bottom part, not so much. 8 and 9, I would say, are weaker spots, or at least 9 probably. But I think it's going to be interesting to see how Tanner Allen controls the run game. And again, I see this, to me, just it's got 3-2, 2-1, something like that written all over it.
Well, Texas is very good, as you mentioned, at manufacturing runs. I mean, that's something they've kind of done that because Dish Falk has traditionally been a big place. They have 45 sack bunts. Doug Hodo III has 10. Eric Kennedy has 8. They've stolen a lot of bases, 85 bases over the course of the season. I think that plays well, for them in this ballpark, trying to, manufacture runs, probably against a really good pitching staff. And Mississippi State's thrown out 18 of 50 base runners this year. The opponents have been successful 32 out of 50 times. Mississippi State has 68 stolen bases, but Mississippi State doesn't bunt. They only have 13 sacrifice bunts on the year. Both teams are pretty good defensively. I think Texas probably has the advantage there, being a really good defensive club. You look at that, Texas has turned 49 double plays this year. That's 2 more than they've made errors. They have 49 double plays and only 47 errors committed over the course of the season. So I could see this being a low scoring kind of game. You talk about Texas, pretty top heavy, not a ton of near the bottom of the lineup. Mississippi State's kind of similar to that. If they can control Jordan and Allen at the top of the order and keep Logan Tanner in the park, which I think in this park they might can, I could see this being a really low scoring pitcher's duel and turning this game over at the end of the game for Mississippi State to Landon Sims, and Texas turning the game over at the end to Aaron Nixon, whose numbers are not quite as impressive, 34 strikeouts in 30 innings. They have the eye-popping strikeouts, the innings pitched that Landon Sims does, but has done a nice job this year. He's only allowed 8 runs and only walked 8 in 30 innings over 25 appearances. But he's their guy with 8 saves out of the bullpen.
Well, State doesn't need to bunt because it puts the ball in play so much. We talked about how it struck out less than any team in the league, even with playing more games. Here's some strikeout rates for State starting hitters. Rowdy Jordan, 13%. Tanner Allen, 11%. Cameron James, 19%. Logan Tanner, 15%. Luke Hancock, 6%. That's crazy. Scotty DeBrule, 11%. Lane Forsythe, 25%. And they don't really count on Forsythe for a lot of offense anyway. You go down the lineup, Kellen Clark, who's kind of a new entry, 19%. So this is the team that is going to put the ball into play. That puts a premium on defense on the other side. That's where Texas fielded 980. So, you got to really, in that park, the other thing that I heard someone bring up, Barry, is because the ball doesn't carry, outfielders can play shallower. So it's just harder to dink balls in than it is in a lot of other venues. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this park translates for State's offense.
It will. And they're a doubles team too. They have 112 doubles, which I think is is a good number for them. 20 for Jordan, 16 for Allen, 12 for James, 11 for Tanner. Doubles kind of team, and they can manufacture runs. I mean, even though they don't bunt, they can. They do put the ball in play. They do not strike out. 386 strikeouts. This season, and I think they can. They have some speed at the top with Allen and Jordan in their lineup. You look at Texas, one number that jumps out for me with Texas. You talk about they play good defense. 49 double plays turned and only 47 errors committed. But you talk about Texas offense going up against the Mississippi State pitching staff. Mississippi State pitchers have struck out 744 batters this year. Texas has struck out 516 times. 516 times. I mean, they have a lot of strike. I mean, this is a strikeout-filled lineup. I didn't realize how much they strike out. A ton. Faltine has struck out 62 times. Kennedy 51. Melendez 60. Williams 49. I mean, this is that is not a lineup built for a power pitching Mississippi State lineup that strikes out 2 batters an inning. That in Texas, it's like they do the same. There could be a lot of strikeouts in Omaha Sunday night between these two teams.
Yeah, I had not noticed that either. I think this is going to be a fascinating matchup. We're going to write up a lot of stuff at the site on these previews, so we'll have more information. This won't be all of it for sure. We'll have some predictions, and we got to end this thing so we can get to that. But, Barry, before we do, any final thoughts on these games that we didn't get to today?
Just the one that we talked about a little bit the other day. I mean, if Texas is that one team. I mean, if there's one event that eats at Mississippi State more than anything else, it's the 1985 loss to Texas. They felt like they were in control and ended up getting the pitcher knocked out of the game and then losing the game and losing the next day to Miami. They really felt like that was their year to win the national title, and it's eluded them. This is their 12th trip. They've never won it. And everybody that I know with Mississippi State points back to that 1985 game. And I even think Ron Polk would admit that if Gene Morgan doesn't get hit in that game and get hurt, Mississippi State probably wins the national title. I mean, that's Clark, Palmero, Big Pen, Brantley. And it just didn't happen for them. And then they got walked off by Miami the next day. I don't know that Chris Lemonis and the Mississippi State players talk about this. I doubt they do. Probably don't know much about it. That's probably not going to be a big deal to them. But for the Mississippi State nation, this is a big game for them Sunday night. They are trying to exercise demons of Texas from years gone by. And Texas knocked them out of the regional in 1983. I mean, Mississippi State and Alabama both playing in a Sunday night regional to go to Omaha. Alabama beats Miami, but Texas can't beat or Mississippi State can't beat Texas. I think Mississippi State lost twice that day and got knocked out of the regional in 83. So Texas has been their bugaboo in the postseason, more than once. And I think for the Mississippi State historians, this is a big deal for them. And just excited to see the other games. I think Stanford and NC State, we didn't talk about that because it didn't have an SEC team in it. But I think that's just an intriguing game. As any of the four, just by how those two teams got here. NC State winning, 2 regionals on the road and Stanford going to Texas Tech and, both utilizing the home run. And, I noticed when I wrote on the preview yesterday, this is Stanford's first trip to Omaha in 2008. Stanford's never played at TD Ameritrade. I mean, I didn't realize that, so I'm sitting there yesterday going, 08. I said, wait a minute, they didn't start playing. And so you talk about Stanford, who's got all this tradition of Omaha and the World Series and back-to-back championships, and this is their first trip to TD Ameritrade to play in the College World Series. And so that of all the history they have, and then of course you have 2 head coaches at Stanford and Virginia, David Esker and Brian O'Connor, joined George Horton as the only 3 coaches to play and be an assistant coach and be a head coach at the College World Series in Omaha. O'Connor played at Creighton. Was an assistant under Maneri at Notre Dame, now the head coach at Virginia. David Esker was on the 1987 Stanford national championship team, made the all-tournament team, hit .350, drove in 6 runs. Assistant coach at Stanford in the 90s under Mark Marquis. And now he's brought Cal and Stanford to the College World Series. I mean, how many coaches out there, Chris, you know, that brought their rival and their team and their bitter rival to the College World Series? I mean, so David Esker's has brought Cal, and now he's brought Stanford to the World Series, and then George Horton did it as well with Fullerton. As a player at Fullerton and an assistant, and he brought the Titans there a number of times. So a little history there with some of the head coaches as we get into the first weekend of a really good, exciting, balanced College World Series.
Well, Barry, like I said, it's just days ahead till it starts. We'll have another podcast on Friday, maybe a little surprise for the audience. It'll be kind of cool. And whatever we come up with tomorrow, I'm looking forward to talking baseball with you.
Well, always looking forward to it. Really excited about the weekend and can't wait for it to get started.
All right. Be sure and go to our site at southeastern14.com. All our coverage free. We've got a lot of stuff we're getting into that we don't talk about on the podcast. So be sure and look us up there. Be sure and rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast where you get those. Apple Podcasts, probably the easiest place, but there's other places to do it as well. Follow us on Twitter at 14 Southeastern. I'm Chris Lee. He's Barry Allen. Thank you for listening to the Thursday edition of the 14. We will see you again on Friday.